Hi everyone, just a quick reminder that if you want to follow along the journey of making this dress in real time with me, both on Instagram and YouTube, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. You get to choose how much to pledge per month, and you will receive live updates both on my close friends' Instagram stories and access to all of the YouTube videos right now. Hope you enjoy the video. So it's the next day and I'm going to work on putting in the pockets in the dress. So actually I'll just bring over one of these pocket pieces so you can see where it's going to go. I've marked with pins just there and same on the other side of where I want the pockets to go. Everything above the pin is the slit opening to get the skirt on and off, and then the pockets I'm thinking will go about there. The pocket pieces that I just cut out, I just did that by eye. They're not following any specific pattern, as long as you've got it deep enough to fit whatever it is that you want in the pocket. So I'm assuming a phone, keys, some stuff, and the opening here is big enough for your hand to slip through, then that should be good. So yeah. Those are my pocket pieces. I'm now going to take these over to the machine. I'm going to sew this pocket around the pocket edge except for the opening, and I'm going to sew that with a French seam. So I'll be back once I've done that, and I'm thinking the French seam will have to be very narrow, just so it won't create too much bulk under the skirt. So I just finished sewing one pocket together with French seams, and I realised that I probably shouldn't have sewn along here and along here up here, because I need these two parts to be separate so I can sew it to the actual side seam of the skirt. So I'm just going to go ahead and unpick that now. Also, I find that the opening for my hand is actually quite small, and the pocket itself is, I mean, it's reasonable, but it is small. But I'm not going to cut out more pockets. This will do fine. I just want somewhere to put my phone, hopefully. But yeah, I'm just going to unpick those stitches now, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing for the other pocket piece, and then we'll see what I do. So I've got my pocket pieces here. As you can see, the side section parts where they attach to the skirt have been left open, so I'm able to do that. And I've got the skirt here, and I've got my pin markings of where I want the pockets to start, and I measured this on the mannequin, and it's about 6 inches down from the waist. So that's about 6 inches, so maybe move it down a bit, so that's 6 there. So I'll move the pin just a tad down, and that's where I want my pocket to start. So what I'm going to do just in this section here is really secure that down by machine. So on the inside I'm just going to sew along the existing seam, but I'm just going to make it extra secure so I know that that won't come undone. I should probably put the pin in the opposite side. So I'll just mark the pin marking here from the inside. Probably can't see very well what I'm doing, but essentially I'm just going to go back over the existing seam just above where the pocket will go. So just this section here. And I should probably also, no, I'll worry about that later. Okay, I'm just going to sew that section. So now those little sections just above where the pockets will go and just beneath the slit of the skirt, those have been secured down with some secure stitches because I did some back stitching. And now I am just going to unpick this seam here where the pocket will go, and I'm going to do that for both sides. So I've just unpicked the stitching along both of the side seams of where I want the pocket to go. So hopefully this makes sense, but here you've got the 2 ties at the waist, and then you've got the slit at the waist, you've got the stitching just beneath the slit, and then I've got this opening for the pocket. So I've got the pocket piece here, and what I'm going to do is start pinning along this edge here, and I'm pinning the inside of the pocket to the right side of my fabric. Yeah. And I'm thinking I'm going to pin it so that the stitching of the pocket, the bottom edge of the pocket, lines up with the seam line. I've just finished pinning the pocket to the side seam, and I'm actually not sure if this is what I want to do, so I'm going to hand baste this down, and then hopefully that will give me a better indication of if this is actually something that I want to do in terms of placing a pocket in this position. So yeah, I'm just going to go through and baste these pieces together, and then we'll put it on the dress form, I think. So here's what we've got so far. Turn it around this way. Hopefully you can see the pocket sort of in there. The opening is definitely a lot smaller than I thought it would be. Okay, let's put that up on the dress form and see how that looks. Now, I didn't put the the front part of the skirt on very tightly because it's difficult to do on a dress form. But here you can see the pocket, so it's actually very well hidden because it's behind this overlap of fabric, which is good because I was thinking that it was going to be quite visible, but if it's hidden like that, then I'm fine to add that pocket in. Yeah. It is a bit of a narrow opening, but I can fit my hand through, and it is quite deep. I should try and put something in it. I've got my wallet. This is probably a bit chunky though. It's not like I need to put a wallet in a dress. Sorry for the shaky camera. I'm trying to do this like while holding the camera. There we go. It's in. And what I'm thinking of doing is the pocket. So the pocket's like, I don't know if you can see my hand, but it comes out to here, and I'm thinking of putting a cotton tape attach it to like the top part of the pocket up to the waist up here with cotton tape. And that's something that they did in Victorian ball gowns to help distribute the weight that's being put into the pocket. It's not just carried by the side seam, it's actually carried by the cotton tape up at the waist, which is a lot more secure. There we go. So yeah, that's the pocket. I think I'm going to do the exact same thing of basting the pocket to the other side seam. So the other side seam doesn't have anything in at the moment. It's just empty. Yeah, but I think that will work out quite well. And I'm just wondering what to do with like the part where it meets the actual seam itself. It's probably going to be a bit dodgy, but it's all right. It's quite hidden. There we go. I'm actually really surprised that the pockets work with this dress. And what I'm thinking for the overlay, so there will be an overlay skirt with the netting, and that's probably going to cover this part, but I'm thinking of having a slit opening for that skirt, the overlay, and then that way I can put my hand in the pocket to get something, but like I obviously wouldn't be just walking around with my hands in my pockets. Yeah. So I've just finished sewing one pocket in. You can see that is a nice pocket in there. This is what it looks like from the inside. So we've got the French seam all around the pocket, and as for these edges here, I've just folded them over and sewn them down just the same way that I did all of the seam allowances in the skirt. I haven't yet done this pocket here, so I'm going to quickly go through how I did what I just showed you, sort of step by step, but not really. So what I've done here is I've basted it along both edges with teal thread, and now I'm just going to run that under the sewing machine. And what I did when I ran this when I ran the other one under the sewing machine is I followed the existing stitching line of the original skirt seam that I unpicked. So that was the line that I followed. I just sew across there and across here. So I'll go do that and I'll be back. Okay, so I'm just looking at what I've sewn. So I've sewn across the original stitching line, as I said before earlier, and this is what it looks like from the outside. You can see that the stitching at the top and bottom of the pocket are still undone, which is fine. I will fix that up later. But the next step that I took was to fold over the excess seam allowance of the pocket over into the seam of the skirt. So here's the excess seam allowance of the pocket, here's the seam of the skirt, and I literally just fold this over like that and pin that in place. and then top stitch on that. So I just put a couple of pins in. Like so, and then I'm just going to run this under the sewing machine to keep that edge folded over with the rest of the seam, and I do that for the other side as well, obviously. Great, so now that's done, and you can see the excess seam allowance has just been folded over and stitched down. I'm going to trim off quite closely to the seam that I just sewed. And that's one seam done, and that's what it looks like. And that just keeps the raw edges from being all over the place. They're sort of tucked under and sewn down. I'm just going to trim the opposite side. Now you would remember that I have not yet sewn the top and the bottom edges of the pocket, so from the outside it still looks like that. And what I'm going to do here is pinch together the seam. So I did this sort of like two ways. So first I pinched together the seam, and I'm going to hand sew this opening part of the pocket just shut, and then after I've done that I'm going to flip the seam allowances the opposite way, and then I'm just going to sew with my sewing machine down here, and just do a little bit of back stitching here, and that will keep everything nice and secure, and it will lock down that loose edge. So I'm going to quickly hand sew just this section here. So I've got my needles over here, and I just sort of start there, and I'm just using a single thread for this, and I just did some tiny back stitching. Oh. Just do some tiny back stitching to make sure that that French seam of the pocket is actually sewn shut. Some of you are probably wondering why I've got so many knots and everything in the beginning part. One of those knots is from this basting thread, and then the other one is obviously from the thread that I've just threaded through now. I'm not going to bother removing the basting thread or anything like that, or worry about making the stitching look nice, because it's hidden in the pocket, and to me it doesn't really matter. As long as it serves its function, that's all that matters to me. I'm just going to lock this thread with a knot. The way I do my knots is I just pierce the fabric a little tiny bit, and then, sorry, my thread's a bit tangled, and then I pull this through, and then in the loop I put my needle, and I just knot my thread like that. And then sometimes I like to just put my thread in and then chop off over here. Cool. So that would now take care of the problem of the French seam not being sewn completely shut for the pocket. So that's all good. But the next thing to do is to I need to sew this part up here. You can see that the actual seam of the skirt has come undone because I did unpick the stitching and there was no stitching there. So I'm going to pinch the fabric together and I'm going to machine sew just to about here, between here and here. Okay, so I've just sewn about in that section. So now when I flip this over to the outside, you can see that that has been nicely closed up. Well, nicely in my opinion, maybe not in some other people's minds. And I'm going to repeat that same process of hand sewing the pocket shut and then doing some stitching here to close up the side seam of the skirt. So I'm just going to do that for the bottom edge of the pocket and then I'll be back. Okay, so I've just sewn the bottom part of the pocket shut, so let's look at how that is looking like from the outside. So there's the top, there's the bottom, and you can see the pocket has nicely been inserted there. Now the last step that I did, and this is to make sure that the pocket does not continually peek outside of where it's supposed to show, is top stitch the seam allowance to the pocket fabric. So to do that, I literally top stitch or understitch, however you want to call it, along, oh, can you see that? Along the pocket, so just along here, just as far as I can go. And from the inside, I should be catching this seam allowance with my stitching. And that's it. That's the completed pocket. So you can see the stitching along the pocket to keep the seam allowance attached to it, and then that way it will prevent the pocket fabric from continually peeking out and showing. Not that that matters, because this pocket will be hidden beneath a very wide fold in the fabric anyway, but it is good to have that stitching. So there we go, there's my hand in the pocket. Yeah, I'm going to put this on the dress form now. But yeah, I'm very pleased with how that turned out. And let's take a look from the inside. So we've got the seams like that, and the French seam going all around the pocket. So yeah. Oh, actually there is one more thing I need to do. I need to add the cotton tape. So actually I'll put this on the dress form and I'll show you what I mean by the cotton tape thingy. So here's what I wanted to show you with the pockets, the thing that I'm doing with the cotton tape. So at the moment the pocket is just flopping about like that. The only support it gets is from the side seam, and that's what would be holding all of the weight when there's things inside the pocket. Now, the thing that I want to do is what I've done on the other side with this pocket, is attach a simple cotton tape, non-stretch, from this area of the pocket where it starts to droop, and attach that up to the waistband. So when this is pulled up and the waistband is attached where it's supposed to be, the pocket will be supported by the cotton tape when there's anything in there. Now it looks like the pocket is getting a bit smushed, but keep in mind that this will also pull outwards and it will keep that section taut. This is really hard to do one-handed, but hopefully you can see that that's how the pocket is, focus, that's how the pocket is going to be secured in, and how it will hold up any weight of any items inside the pocket. So yeah, that's a trick that Victorians did, because I saw I'll link the video I saw below, but one of the other costumers did a video on inserting pockets into her Victorian ball gown, and this was something that she did. She's got a full tutorial on like if you want to do it the historic way, but yeah, I just stole that little trick from her. And yeah, so I'm just going to machine stitch it down, just machine stitch across here and then across the top in the seam allowance of the actual pocket itself, and that will be the pockets done. Yeah, nothing else to say on that. I will do that pocket cotton tape pocket business off camera, and I will be back to show you the final I'll be back to show you the final product, and yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. And there we have it. The stitching has been done on the pocket and then at the waistband. Yeah, and it's good to go. So you can see how that cotton tape will now support the pocket in terms of the weight that's being held here. That will actually be supported by the waistband, which is a lot more sturdy than just the pocket seam. So that's it. I would say that the base skirt is done, apart from the hem, obviously, but I am still waiting for my, what's it called? Crinoline horsehair. I bought some of that stuff off AliExpress, and I'm still waiting for it to arrive. But once that arrives, then I can finish off the hem of the skirt. So let's put this on this dress form one last time. There we go. So the skirt now has pockets, as you can see, and I can easily put my hand in there and fit stuff in there, and it's supported by the waistband because the cotton tape goes up to about here, and the pocket is in here. Trying to show you where my fingers are so you can see how big the pocket is. There you go. So I think that is a success, and the pockets are nicely hidden in that fold of the fabric, so we don't have this ugly opening showing. And I actually found that I prefer to tie the ribbon around the back and then across to the front and tie it in a bow in the front. I find it's a lot more secure that way rather than just in the back. You can see the bum pad provides a little bit of extra support to smooth this section out. I'm not really happy with it, but I also ordered a cheap like $15 what's it called, hoop skirt thing, and it's a trained hoop skirt, so it sort of tapers out towards the bottom, and I'm hoping that will help to make this look all right, because at the moment it's got this weird like straight down shape, whereas what I want it to do is like, I don't mind this, but I just want this bottom part to curve outwards a bit more to allow for the train to splay outwards. So that's my only concern with the back, but the pockets and everything else I am really happy with. I think this skirt took me a lot longer than expected to make, and I found that I actually lost a lot of length from the train and the bottom of the skirt because I had to keep hiking this waistline higher and higher up. I don't know if you remember, but there was a point in time when these two sections did not even overlap. They did not even meet or touch. So I think that just goes to show how much I've actually taken off the bottom of the dress. So it is a lot shorter than I was wanting it to be, but I much rather have this overlap and the pockets as well than to have a long dress but it does not fit right at the waist. So yeah, I'll give you a faraway view So there's the front, and then here is the back. The train's just a crumpled mess at the moment. But yes, I am still waiting for my crinoline horsehair to arrive, and that's something I'm going to line the hem with, and that should help to hold out the bottom of the skirt. So I'm going to take a break now, and I don't know when I'll get back to working on this, but I'm hoping to get started on the bodice mock-up first. I think I've had enough skirt making business, so I think getting started on the bodice mock-up is the next step. So yeah, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll see what I get started with next.